Welcome to Innovation in Government, presented by Carasoft. This program's from the 7th Annual GovForward ATO and Cloud Security Summit in Washington. I'm your host, Francis Rose. Cloud computing's in its second decade in the federal government. Former Federal Chief Information Officer Vivek Kundra released the first government-wide cloud strategy in December 2010. Security was one of the most important aspects of the cloud then and still is now, according to government leaders. Over the next hour, you'll meet leaders from NASA and NIST who are on the front lines of securing the cloud for their users and other agencies. Katie Arrington, performing the duties of the Defense Department CIO, will tell you how the Pentagon's scaling continuous authorities to operate in the cloud. And you'll hear from industry leaders that are supporting the federal government's cloud security efforts. First, a look at what agencies need to build secure cloud environments. Alex Whitworth of Carasoft, it's great to see you again. Thanks for joining me today. What's the theme of the discussions that are going on right now in the cloud security and ATO community now?
Great question. You know, it's a very interesting time for modernization in government, right? Government is really focused on removing bureaucracy and speeding the ability to buy and bring new technology in to help us solve the problems that we're all trying to solve here collectively. And if you look at some of the efforts being put forth by the FedRAMP office, by GSA, by DoD, with their software fast track initiative, it's clear that they are focused on trying to solve these problems, accelerate ATOs, and bring in a level of automation into that process so that the continuous monitoring aspect can be achieved much more efficiently.
Mm-hmm. A lot of discussion about the FedRAMP 20X and what that means for the government side. What does that mean in your view for the industry side, and how are you telling folks that you partner with on the industry side to respond to that so that they can continue to serve the government as well as they possibly can?
Absolutely. The FedRAMP 20X really does create the potential for industry and software producers to get to a FedRAMP ATO much faster, right? As the program works out and it continues to roll out and they work through some of the things that they're trying to work through now. We're telling software companies to get ready, lean into FedRAMP more than ever, because government's trying to find easier ways for new technology to come in. It also creates an opportunity for ATO accelerators and those focused on delivering automation in that process. So there's a whole market of great companies that are either just forming or starting to really accelerate that can help companies come into government through the FedRAMP process much faster.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the SWIFT program at the Pentagon, the software fast track. We've already hit on FedRAMP. There are a number of different frameworks and processes here. Are companies having any difficulty navigating this? I kind of think of it like putting puzzle pieces together. Is that presenting a challenge for companies, or are these all being presented in a way that is pretty logical and methodical for companies to try to make sure they're doing all the things they should do?
That's a good question. You know, there is a certain amount of complexity to it because there are so many different pieces and parts and different people and players involved. But I will say, you know, the level of sort of common sense that's being introduced into the process will help reduce that complexity. And there's also so many great advisors and consultants in the market that can help walk companies through and sort of provide the Rosetta Stone of how to understand and get through the processes.
Mm-hmm. That Rosetta Stone concept is a smart way to frame it too, I think, because it can seem complex, I imagine. And translation was what I think of when I think of Rosetta Stone. That sounds like a logical way to present that idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, and in Carasoft, we really focus on understanding all of these different complexities. And so welcome the opportunity to talk with new companies that are either just getting started with FedRAMP or DoD impact levels, or are well into their journey and they're maybe pivoting or trying to decide where to go next. And so we have a good understanding of the market and the available options for achieving those goals. And so happy to talk to companies as they're starting to evaluate the possibilities.
About a minute left. What's over the horizon in your view? What should companies be paying attention to today that maybe they don't need to worry about today, but should be aware is coming down the pike?
Yeah, I think down the horizon, if you sort of play through 20X and some of these other initiatives, really leveraging commercial capabilities to automate the continuous monitoring of all of these different control sets, so that at any given time, right, you don't have to redocument your effort completely for accreditation, right? The system is constantly checking and making sure and demonstrating the evidence that you are at a compliant state. So really focusing on that automation piece.
Alex, always great to catch up with you. Thanks for your time. Wonderful to see you again, as always, Katie. Thanks for joining me. We talked a little bit before we turned the cameras on about how you're using artificial intelligence. And like I said, a lot of the discussion around AI in the department, people want to talk about tip of the spear, weapon systems and so on. I understand that. But you talked about the progress that you're making in the back office systems, business processes, and so on. Why is that important, in your view, for the department to pursue?
Oh, hugely important. So, A, good to see you again, as always, a dear friend. And secondly, so one of the biggest, under my purview is something called the Defense Business Council. And our job is to get the business systems, we had well over 1,800 disparate different business systems within the Department of Defense. And that is a huge burden on the taxpayer. How are we collapsing those? And in all honesty, it's to get to be audit ready in 27. So we're using a lot of AI to look at the business flow, business processes, because behind every weapon system, the tip of the spear is the weapon system. That's all fueled by a business system and personnel and resourcing. So we're using AI tools right now. The CDAO just let I think 5 different new AI companies to come in the door and to be made available. Thank you to Congress for the reconciliation package, so we actually have the resources to be able to do that. But if we're not using AI and large language modeling to get the business rules aligned, I mean, that's the first thing, get them aligned. And the ability for one system to have interoperability with the other to collapse into one frame, that is a massive effort that, we have a council, we have, RMGs that are meeting every single week, because we want to do right by the taxpayer, but we need AI to do that. So that's one of the biggest priorities. I talk a lot about SWIFT, I talk a lot about ATO processes, but a lot of what we're doing is getting those business systems down to a manageable number. What does that manageable number look like? Well, we're using AI to do that, right? It's tools and capability. One program might have some unique capability-ish, but the main, AI is helping us determine what are the requirements that you all have in common, create a box around that, and anybody that needs to color outside of that box, you have to go before a review board, not just a CIO, but a review board. And they'll look at AI and determine, is it actually necessary, or can your business rule be modified to fit back in the box?
Are you finding opportunities to change business processes at the same time?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, we're redefining, we're realizing we have redundancy throughout the department, and it's not out of maliciousness. It's out of, this entity stood up and they're doing this, and they were given instruction either by NDAA language or a directive from within the department, but duplication in business systems and business roles, coding, algorithms. Something is algorithm of an E4 in one business system versus a different. Unbelievable. How to purchase, completely different. So we're absolutely seeing that, using AI. I mean, it's all day, every day, and twice on Sunday.
Is the goal just deduplication, or is the goal establishing whether there may be cases where duplication, redundancy is necessary and desirable?
So what we're trying to do ultimately is drive everything into Advana, right? Our one major platform that we can look at all of our financial systems in one place. So interoperability, right? It may be a duplicative system but making sure it all feeds into Advana so we can see a holistic picture, one picture, so that when we need to ask, how much money are we spending on X blank, it's a click, a search, a query, and we're able to get that information because the taxpayers deserve that, right? But the efficiencies that we're creating, and there are very few things that are duplicative that we've realized. There are, special segments, a special ops are a different animal altogether, and how they buy is completely different than the way a normal service buys. So there are special rules that we need to have and business systems for them to be able to do that. That would be something we'd look at as one of those exceptions. But Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, they're all buying in the same vein, and all of their business systems need to be aligned. But it's efficiency is what we're after. We want to get more money out of using duplicative business systems, redundancies, and more money to the war fighter. That's our goal.
It's striking to me too, because you're I can't remember how many now, but a number of CIOs or equivalents over the last 10, 15 years have talked about the importance of using whatever the technology of the day is to drive efficiency and effectiveness in the audit process, which one would think is in the purvey of the comptroller's office.
So we work hand in hand with comptroller. The big difference in the department right now, I will say Dr. Doug Matty, he's the CDAO, Ann McAndrews at the comptroller, and Mike Payne at CAPE, and myself. The four of us work tirelessly to make sure that we've got the right conversations going, that everything has to be able to facilitate everybody else. There's no point to creating a business rule if comptroller can't use it, or CAPE can't use it, or the services can't use it. So it's been truly amazing, the partnerships. It's the new Department of Defense. It really is. It's taken a minute, right? Everybody trying to find their legs and get themselves. And reconciliation, working through that process was hard for everybody. But we really have such an amazing team in place that are looking for how do we get out of the norm of what we've been doing and looking at new ways to do it, staying with the confines of the law, but really driving efficiencies. I think this year alone, we've already collapsed 84 business systems.
Do you have an end goal number in mind, or is it you'll know it when you see it, more art than science?
Katie Arrington has an end goal number. I don't know that everybody
one.
else. Well, it is actually, but that I doubt. If I could get down to at least 2 business systems per service, I'd be happy. That is a goal. So we have quick wins this year that we were able to collapse about 84. We saw some, we made some mistakes along the way, turning off contracts a little bit too early, but having partnership with people like the CIO of the Navy and the CIO of the Air Force. We are a team. I mean, I say one team, one fight. We really are a collective team. We meet every single week. We talk about what we're doing and challenges we're having in our areas. We created a playbook to collapse the business systems. We're putting out guidance on how to do it out of the CIO shop. This CIO is a different CIO than we've seen in a long time, where we're actually digging in and saying, okay, this is what we need you to do, execute against this, because we all work at the Department of Defense. I serve at the pleasure of the President. You're assigned to a service, but everything is for the Department of Defense, and ultimately that means the COCOM. And making sure whatever we're doing is going to meet the need of the combatant commander at the time of relevance for the warfighter, full stop. And it really is an amazing, some of the CIO meetings I sat in when Trump won, the first time I was in the building, and just the difference, their lively conversations, their ideas. I look at my peers in there and, that might not work for me. We'll explain that, walk me through it. And it's not just, a quiet room of reading a PowerPoint. It's having CDAO in the room. And we're talking about data labeling and data tagging in business systems. And what does that look like? And what does the ICAM, the Identity Credential Access Management, look like for a business system manager to be able to see the right data? Those are real conversations that we, instead of, the best way I can say it is, we have opened the aperture up so those that we serve are in the room, comptroller, CAPE, CDAO, and really working together as a collaborative group. It's something that I've seen bits and pockets. I just like the fact that I'm in the midst of it right now.
Penny Klein's the Chief Information Security Officer at SAP NS2. Thanks for joining me. It's great to have you here. What's the trajectory look like as far as how agencies are approaching cloud security, how they're incorporating the FedRAMP program into their strategies for security in the cloud and so on?
That's a great question, right? So what we are seeing is that there are a lot of frameworks that are currently being updated to accommodate what's going on right now. I've been in this world for a long, long time and started when there were just the mainframes in the basements, right? It was easy then. Agencies could just, take the responsibility for what was in their basement per se. And today we're now looking at a cloud where everything is mixed. So we're seeing out there, the SBOM, what kind of software are you using and can I accept that? That's going to help when we have breaches that we've seen recently. You can quickly go down and see what product you have. We're looking at FedRAMP 20X, of course. I mean, that's the big talk in the town right now. How do we move it? We're looking at things like RMF. The risk management framework is also being, revitalized. Endpoint security. All of this is rolling up. Even SWIFT. I mean, DoD's even getting into it, right? So all of these new frameworks, I think, are really going to have an impact. We're on the cusp of another one. We went from the mainframe to site-based to FedRAMP, and now I think we're on the cusp of something else. I think we just need to be a little careful that we're not throwing the baby out with the water and forget things like insider threat and physical controls as well as we move towards technology.
That's kind of where I wanted to go next. Is there a risk in too many frameworks that agencies will be spending so much time on frameworks and the compliance and all of that, and maybe not as much time as they would like on actually securing their systems? It's a challenge that I know has existed for a long time.
It is a challenge, and it was been there, done that, had the T-shirt kind of thing, right? So when every agency has their own security control, or there's multiple frameworks to choose from, it gets hard for industry. It gets hard for government. Are you meeting what you need to meet? The biggest one that I think that we're going to see is, government agencies and DoD, we're merging under FedRAMP, and now we're seeing them kind of diversify again. But one way or another, I think at some point, all of these are going to have to merge, to your point, or people are going to start picking and choosing.
What's the best thing that industry can do to help government wrap their arms around all these things that are going on right now?
I think the industry, since we're the ones doing all the innovation with the technology, right, we need to be at the table. We need to play. Bottom line is we need to step up as industry. We need to participate. We need to become key players. So if government puts those policies out there, it's really up to us. We need to input to it, because government, I was a govie, right? We look at it. This is how I'm going to consume it. From industry, we're giving it to you to consume. And so there's 2 points of view, and I think if we don't come together, it's going to really impact us later on.
How can government help you do what you just described? What information can they share with you? What advance notice about policy and so on would be helpful, do you think?
So that is great. And, if I was queen for a day, that's exactly where I would go. I think what industry needs from government right now is, to your point, what's coming down the line? What are their pain points? What are they most afraid of industry not securing this? We kind of saw this with CMMC, right? Our technology is being sold to China. It makes them nervous. So if we know what it is, we can kind of, come to that conclusion. We also need to be trusted. It's always kind of been us and them. Like I said, been on both sides. I get that, right? And we need to come together, and we need to be trusted that the input we're going to give you, right, is going to be secure. It's going to be cloud native. The beginning, we all know we were picking it up. It was a little difficult to get security around it, but we're now going cloud native, right? So we can help influence these frameworks in a positive, manner.
If you were back in government in a role that dealt with cybersecurity again, what would your top concerns be, and what questions would you be asking of industry, and what maybe are government people not asking you that they should be today?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think if I was a govie today, I would be asking, how are you securing this? And I don't want it to be, pencil whipped, right? You're just telling me that it is, but really, are you looking, do you understand the intent of the security control? Anybody can read it in black and white, right? But we can't really see it from an intent. There are different ways to get to the final answer, and I think government forgets to ask that. I also think that if I was, government, I would ask industry, how can you make me feel more secure? Now that I'm losing control is a good word, I guess. I am no longer running the scans myself. I am no longer involved day to day, and this is going to make me nervous as a govie. What can you do to help make me feel, more secure? So that's where I think I would go with that.
It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today. Josh Kruger's Chief Information Security Officer at Project Hosts. It's great to see you, Josh. Thanks for joining me today. What's the evolution that you're seeing in cloud security risk management? And what's the industry dynamic to help the federal government figure that out and meet its needs?
Yeah, I think we're starting to get away from, point in time annual assessments. We're starting to get more into agencies want continuous visibility into the security posture of the systems. They want to know if their database is all of a sudden unencrypted, or they want to know if, there's exploitable vulnerabilities affecting the system. They don't want to look at a POAM or vulnerability scans that are uploaded monthly and, talk to the cloud service provider for 10 minutes and talk through it. And they want that continuous visibility into the products. And that's something, we're working on as a company. So we have, we're already collecting this data. All this telemetry data is everywhere that we're collecting from all these different systems that, we host our systems. And so we're working on putting in dashboards that agencies can just look at any time, or they get notifications for critical, findings or things like that. So yeah, it's really just a move towards continuous ATO, continuous risk posture management, essentially.
Yeah. Do the agencies have in place whatever frameworks or infrastructure they need to be able to monitor that stuff and then also do the data exchange that's necessary for it?
I think there'll be some growing pains as we move towards it. This is what, the FedRAMP 20X program is moving towards. It's what I think the software fast track, the SWIFT program, the DoD CIO is working on. It's all moving towards this continuous risk assessments. Probably not right now. They're probably not, fully staffed, fully ready for the SWIFT, the transition. I think they probably allocate time per system per month right now to review the, the risk posture. So yeah, it'll be a change in the industry for it. But
what are the building blocks that will be helpful for them and also helpful for people like you in industry to help them achieve their goals?
Collaboration. Yeah. Join the community working groups. Don't wait for the guidance to be published. They're putting out requests for comments and all of this stuff constantly. They're having industry working groups a couple times, every other week or so on the different programs. So be a part of the change. Tell us how you want it on the agency side, and in the industry, we're going to give our best feedback that we can as well. But I think there's too many security practitioners just waiting for guidance to be published, and they'll follow it, or they'll want to give feedback at that time, but kind of too late at that point. You need to be involved early in the process as it all gets fleshed out.
Is that getting better, do you think? Are agencies more willing to participate in that kind of dialogue than they have been in the past?
I guess I'm not super involved with the agency side. It's probably a better director for or a question for FedRAMP and the folks driving it.
Yeah.
But I think they're starting to get open to it. They also realize that looking at a POAM, looking at a one-time assessment for a point in time isn't security. Yeah, sure, it's compliance. It's check the box. Let's get away from the check boxes and get to the actual secure.
Well, and that's kind of the issue overall with judging success. Is I ask people a lot of the times, how do you measure success? And I guess not having a catastrophic attack is probably one measure of success, but it's probably not the only one.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a metric we track. Did you pass the audit? How many findings did you have? This and that. But probably a better one is how many exploitable vulnerabilities popped up. How did we mitigate them? Not only was there an attack, but could there have been an attack? Or actionable metrics that are evaluated in real time through automation, right? Not, hey, my ISSE looked through the system. They saw that this was uncompliant. We should have been notified. It shouldn't have been a random check or a manual verification. We should have already known about it. right? And then I think as you move towards that, everything else kind of doesn't take care of itself, but it'll all fall in line.
Yeah,
across
it
the board.
sounds like then one of the most important things that's going to happen, it's, I guess already happening now, but will happen over the next several months and years, is the proliferation of automation throughout all these processes. Is that a fair read on my part?
Oh, it's absolutely, it's key. Automate everything possible, and then have the people verifying the automation's working properly, and all the tests are taking care of themselves.
Josh, thanks for joining me today. It's great to have you here. Teresa Kinney is Senior Deputy Program Director for NASA SOUP. Welcome. It's great to talk to you as we're here talking about security and so on. What are the main themes of what agencies are coming to you and asking you for in the acquisition process?
I will tell you, they are looking at how they can streamline acquisition as much as possible. Really, the focus here is with cybersecurity, supply chain risk, with all of these venues that are just constantly evolving, federal government changing on their policies on how they look at these things, and then private industry itself between the parent company and the child company, and these industries are changing and evolving daily, right? So how does the federal government get their hands around all of that to the correct information so they can make the best decision they can for their organization, for their purchases? So what we've come up with is what we call a storefront, and they can set up this storefront with all of the products that they're looking to purchase, and then we go out to make sure that they're CMMC, they're FedRAMP, they're 889, all of those policies, ISO 20243, which is an open group policy for malicious and tainted products that are out there, right? We have over half of our contract holders right now have this ISO agreement or this certification. And we can check all of those boxes for them. So they're checking less boxes and they can trust the products that they're getting through the vehicle. So once they set up that storefront, they can even put like clauses that just comply to their agency into that storefront. And it just makes it so easy, streamless, frictionless, and they can get their products quicker.
Are there questions that they're asking you, are there common threads to them? And are there questions that maybe agencies should be asking you about their acquisitions and they're not? I
think they feel pretty open to ask us any question that they want, and they pretty much do. I mean, we get probably over 60,000 tickets that just like help tickets a year. I mean, it's a lot of them come in. But I will tell you, one of the things that they're really struggling with is clauses that private industry keep putting into these, especially the softwares. And as we know, government really can't agree to those clauses, right? But then they'll say, well, if you're not going to agree to them, we're not going to be compliant to it, or we're not going to even offer it to you. But they can get our office involved in that as well. And we have a staff of folks that work just on the industry side and then are the government side. And we get everyone in the room together and let's have a conversation. Let's talk, right? How can we make this a win-win for both sides? And I think that's important. I think it's important that industry start talking to government like we're a team together instead of, oh, that's government, we're private industry. I think those days are gone. I think it's really important that we start talking to one another and telling each other what's going on out there.
You're not the first person to say that you think those days are gone, but what maintains that momentum in your view? How do you keep that going? How do you keep that dialogue open as new players come into the market? All aspects of the federal government are talking about how do we get new people involved in the industrial base and so on, not just DOD and the DIB, but on the civilian side too. And those folks will kind of need to get up to speed on how things work in the government and become part of that dialogue, I imagine.
I will tell you, when I've been with SOUP since SOUP 3, so I've been on a couple iterations that have come in. And for the most part, I will tell you, the newbies, it takes probably a year and a half, 2 years for them to really understand how to use the vehicle, understand how government works, understand the whole gamut. I mean, it's a totally different environment. And so a lot of people, when they look at the contract, they go, oh my gosh, I need this contract, sort of like, the baseball. If I build the field, the baseball players will come, right? And that's just not a true statement. Salespeople need to understand how government works. They need to understand the policies, the FAR regulations that these people have to follow, right? So we try to educate, we try to bring them up as quick as possible. We do a lot of hand-holding in the beginning, especially for the industry side, trying to, help them navigate and figure out, how they can get their foot into this store and start really making a profit and money. And I mean, at the end result, that's what everyone's here for, right? Private industry, at least. And the government gets what they need, right? And how to keep good reputations and all of it. I mean, we're here to help them.
What do you think you could do to help streamline that process for the agencies more? You talked about how important that is to them. And as the person serving or the organization serving that customer, what do you think your organization's role is in doing that?
We've already started kind of down that road. We work a lot with, I can't name them, higher agencies that really can look into what's going on, internationally, right, with these companies and stuff. And how do we start sharing information without sharing, decisions that are being made? Because each decision is going to be made based on what your needs are. Yes. Okay, so we've already started down that road. We meet with them on a quarterly basis. We talk about different ideas that are happening and stuff. The attestation letter, I think the concept there was good, but we kind of knew it wasn't going to really work. I know that they're trying to figure out how to make it work. But if you talk about a software, you've got a software library over here. Who knows where all of those programs came from? Nobody does. So it's really kind of hard to track where the parent company is and where the child company is and where it's coming from. So, then you look at who's putting in the back doors to the software, right? So how do you go, okay, so where can I find a program that'll help me search for the back doors? Not necessarily, is there a back door, right?
Yeah. So. Teresa, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today. Leah McGrath of GovRamp, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining me again. You're making progress, it sounds like, in incorporating these processes and procedures into the actual contracts. Tell me about that progress, how you've made it, and what difference you're seeing it make.
Oh, it's been tremendous. So, GovRamp, we've had our security program, and we have 30 states now, a few more actually, 30 plus, who are working with us to leverage GovRamp to validate their third-party security of their providers. And that's so important in the partnerships and enabling innovation to happen. What we realized pretty early on is that if those requirements are not incorporated into the contracts, the procurement up front, and those terms and conditions, then it's just pretty words on a paper. And so we've really spent quite a bit of time in the last couple of years working with NASPO, the National Association for State Procurement Officials, with the Center for Digital Government, to bring everyone together. And so through those task forces, we were able to come up with a best practices, a procurement toolkit that really helps identify how to do this, right? And we know that not all data has the same risk, so we've been able to really provide kind of different clauses, different ideas or concepts for how to incorporate it, the requirements in based on what they need when. And that has been very critical to this. So some examples of this being put into action, just in July this month of 2025, we've seen the state of Arizona and the state of Utah go live with these new requirements in their T's and C's, and we have many others happening as well that we're excited about who are following suit. So for those who are questioning what that looks like, we do have that on our website at govramp.org, but we also then point to those contracts, terms, and conditions from there so people can see, what does this look like when you put it into action? We have an ongoing procurement committee where we bring public sector and industry together to continuously look at that, to think about how's it working in the real world, what are the pains and challenges, and how do we continue to improve that so that others can benefit from that shared insight.
What's the benefit that you have by being able to point to the FedRAMP program and say, this is how it's working at the federal level, and these are the good results they're getting, and this is why this is something that makes sense for you at the state level?
Oh, that's a great question. It's really been about how do we enable innovation to happen in government faster? That's the question we're trying to answer, and I think that's what FedRAMP has been able to do in many cases, and I think that's what we have been able to do largely in part of our community. We have an incredible community. We're a nonprofit, so we're different. And that actually has been to our advantage because we're able to bring all of the voices in the community together, from industry to, government at, all levels of government, to understand what's working for them, what's not. How can we take the positive outcomes of the FedRAMP program and learn from that to incorporate it into what we do, to be able to enable secure innovation to happen faster. One of the things that we learned, though, that's different in state and local government and education sector certainly, is that many of the providers who serve them, the cloud technologies that are being utilized, are not always ready for the full authorization. And so we've developed, I like to say, kind of a starter place to begin with our snapshot program, and we just rolled out a new core status that is a step that providers can take before they move on to that full authorization. And that has been a game changer. We've incorporated that into the procurement as well to continue to provide that transparency very early into the security posture of a product so that states and local government leaders can make the right risk-based decisions for them. And then they can decide how far they need a provider to go.
About 30 seconds left. I imagine that community concept that you talked about means that information's flowing the other way too, that you're learning things that the FedRAMP program can benefit from.
I think that's very true. And I think we've actually seen some of that iterate over the last few years even, as they formalized some of the committees and the input. I think some of the learnings that we've had is how important it is to be agile, how important it is to iterate. I like to say we innovate through iteration. And all of that comes through the community feedbacks from the industry, from public sector. And so one of the things that I think has been core that we've learned that can be, kind of transferred up is the shared learnings, that it is not a one and done, right? That we have a centralized portal that allows our private sector members to share their continuous monitoring reporting ongoing all the time with their government sector or their government customers. And we have a continuous monitoring escalation policy because government customers don't want to log in every day and see what's going on, right? But they do want to log in if there's an indication of an issue or a change. And so we can notify them so that they can log in and take action when needed. And that has been such a cool partnership and collaboration between all of the stakeholders to make happen.
Leah, it's great to talk to you again. Thanks for your time today.
You too.
Melissa Carson's Vice President General Manager for Iron Mountain. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining me again. We talked a little bit about the continuous authority to operate concept that the Defense Department's pursuing. In your view, how will that help industry help serve government, and in particular the Defense Department, better as that proliferates throughout the department?
Yeah, we've been discussing with many of our customers about what we consider, now that automation is there, kind of the continuous monitoring process and perspective of that. Plus also there's right now, you get even the authorization to operate, and you still have to go through the same laborious process on an annual basis. So we've been working with a few of our customers to talk about doing a periodic kind of audit with just a subset of some of those controls on a continuous basis. The way we look at it is cyber threats are changing every day, right? So even to wait a year to actually do some of those audits probably isn't necessarily the best, security protocols going forward. So it is all starting to blend in together. So absolutely, and it's interesting now that the Defense Department right now is thinking about the same things, because we've been addressing it with some of the civilian agencies. And in one in particular, obviously, that's tied to defense is the Veterans Administration. So I'm glad to hear that now actually on the government side, right, they're taking that to heart and understanding that these, once a year checkpoints or you just check the boxes isn't going to prevail and is actually probably a threat to their risk profile, because they think that everything's done and okay, right, but it's really not.
It's striking to me that you talked about discussing this with your customers in government, and for a long time the government would just decide, well, this is how we're going to do it, and industry has to do it the way that we want to. It says something to me that they're engaging in a conversation with you about what would help you help us. That's progress, it sounds to me.
The partnership, I believe, has come quite a ways, right? And a couple things is, we as the industry have decided we need to do a little bit better job of the information sharing, right? So we do, through even some of the commercial entities that we do some of this emerging technologies with, we need to bring that really forward to the governments and help with that, along with transparency. So from the very beginning of these development cycles, right before we even as industries start to develop these new cloud applications or frameworks, really need to understand the security profiles and protocols of the actual agency so that there's clear roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities. That was not happening in the past. We were kind of two different silos going at it a different way. You get to the ATO, and all of a sudden it's not compliant, right? So we're finding now that this partnership, but we had to come to the table with our expertise and be willing to share some of the threats that we're seeing even on our own internal networks or, and systems like that. So I think it's come a long ways.
What's the next step for industry to continue to be the full kind of partner with, particularly the Defense Department, but the whole government in the way that you just described, Melissa?
Yeah, taking it from, kind of the Iron Mountain lens, is we're into completely understanding that information governance and data governance is now much more important, right? And we therefore say you've got to go lay that kind of groundwork, because what we're seeing is as they've modernized and put a lot of things on cloud, many times they've just rebuilt their data silos, and once again, still no ownership and disconnects there. So we are helping them step back as our other industry partners and say, you need to lay that data governance foundation before you continue to build on it. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a cloud version of what you had, right, on an on-prem or, your own solutions.
Mm-hmm. We have less than a minute left. How will you measure the success that your company and other companies have in doing what you talked about as far as being a partner for the federal government?
What we see is, and we continue to emphasize, right, that you can't govern or secure what you cannot see, right? So what success looks to us is truly agility and fast, but not giving up the secure aspect of it. And we've also said for the, many of these protocols, we want to make sure there's an awareness, right, of the financial impacts, right, and across both the agency side. They need to have technology now, not 5 years down the road. So success is both of us, serving the citizens and the mission critical pieces with speed and compliance.
It's great to have you here as always. Vicki Piltieri of NIST is here. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate having you. Here to talk about the risk management framework that your organization has released. How's that having an influence in your view on the way that organizations are thinking about doing cloud security, cybersecurity in general, and especially now it's starting to touch AI too?
Well, the NIST risk management framework is the foundation for cybersecurity risk management, and it's the process that any organization, federal agency or private sector, can use to better understand and manage the risks to their systems and organizations from use of any kind of IT system, including AI. So the process is basically preparing for risk management, implementing a good risk management program, selecting the protections you need, implementing and continuously monitoring. It is completely agnostic to any type of technology, to any type of organization. These are frankly just good practices in a repeatable, manageable way to communicate about that. So we're really excited to see how this is going to be applied for upcoming new and emerging technologies like AI. We've seen it applied to IoT systems. So it's just a little bit of the same process with a slightly different tint on how you implement and select your protections.
Take me back through the genesis of this. What was the original demand signal that created your organization's efforts to start doing this in the first place?
Well, basically, when the government started buying and implementing IT systems, we realized, oh, there's a lot of risk we have to manage. And originally, before the FISMA, the Federal Information Security Modernization Act of 2002, I think.
Sounds right.
And then updated in 2014, it told agencies, you need to understand and manage risks associated with IT systems. That's it. So the RMF is a process, it's a methodology, not a checklist. And I think one of the things that we've seen over time is the RMF is being used as a checklist. It's not you do these 10 things and you're compliant. It's a process that can be used by anyone. It can be tailored to your environment, to your system, to your organization, to your needs, so you can understand what you have, how you need to protect it, and if you're doing it.
How do you get out there and let people know that it's not a checklist, that it's not intended for that use in the first place?
Well, I have great people like you invite me to hang out. Basically, it's good practice, right? We're trying to codify things that just make sense. And at the end of the day, it's how do we provide the tools and the resources to all stakeholders so they can better understand what they have, identify how to protect it, and do it, and continuously monitor it. And we do this through our security and privacy controls.
You told me before we turned the cameras on that you're in the process of taking comments and parsing those, understanding what people's issues are. What makes for good feedback from whether it's government or industry or some other interested person to help inform how you move forward?
Well, something that's really special about NIST standards and guidelines is we really rely not only on our own research and the expertise we have in-house, but partnerships with federal agencies and feedback from any stakeholder, whether you be a two-person shop or whether you be the largest federal agency there is. Good feedback is helping us understand what works well, what doesn't work well. The guidance that we have, it's developed to be organization agnostic, tool agnostic, vendor and technology agnostic. But are we pointing you in the right direction to help you protect your systems and organizations from a very specific risk? The comment period that you're talking about recently closed in the beginning of August. NIST has adjudicated the comments, and we're really excited to release an update to our security and privacy controls before September 2nd in accordance with the recent executive order on cybersecurity.
Whether it's this particular incident or just generally when you're taking comments from the public, how do you go through those and incorporate them and use them to inform whatever the finished product is?
Well, NIST has actually developed a really cool tool that allows organizations to provide us feedback on our controls anytime. So 2 a.m, you can't sleep. You know what'll help you sleep? Reviewing some controls and giving us some feedback.
I'll try that.
It'll put you right to bed, don't worry. But what we do is we accept comments anytime, not just during comment periods. So as you're using it, as you're implementing our standards and guidelines, we want to hear from you, from the implementer, what works well, what doesn't work well, and how can we make it better. So that's, we accept comments anytime. And during comment periods, as we plan for revisions, we consider every single comment. We adjudicate and review every single piece of feedback that we get. And we battle a little bit on how best to recommend and implement them. But their feedback is incorporated into updates of 53, and through our really cool tool that we've developed, you, as the stakeholder that gives us feedback, will know if your feedback was accepted, whether it was declined, and you can reach out and find out why.
So you talked about releasing the final product on the risk management framework. Once that comes out, do you have some metrics whereby you're able to see, okay, organizations are using this the way that we hoped or intended, or once something's out, is it on to the next thing?
I think it's a little bit of both. We don't formally accept measure implementation or how well organizations are doing. But given our great relationship with other federal agencies and private sector, we always take that anecdotal feedback anytime to understand how people are using it, what's working well and what's not, and we consider that for the next iteration. Whether you like it or not, good risk management is going to be here to stay. So even though we are working on a lot of new exciting things, like work on developing security controls focused on protecting AI systems, our bread and butter is always promoting good risk management.
You anticipated my next question. We have about a minute left. What's next?
What's next? So we're really excited to hopefully soon be releasing a concept paper of our plan for developing a set of security control overlays for protecting AI systems. And I think one of the things that we really want to do is address the different use cases of AI. Because how you would protect the model, the data, and the output for, say, a predictive AI system versus a generative AI system versus an agentic AI system versus, for developers of AI systems. The security considerations are going to be slightly different, and you're going to have slightly different focuses. But the one thing that we did here from our great partnerships with other agencies, with private sector, is to leverage existing standards and guidelines. And that's what exactly we plan to do. So really excited to release that, start up a community of interest, and get you all engaged.
It's great to have you here, Vicki. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Francis.
Dale Hoke is the Chief Information Security Officer at Red Scale. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining me today. We talked a little bit before we turned the cameras on about shared responsibility. What's the vendor's role and what's the government's role in cloud security? What do you see that dynamic looking like today?
So I really feel that on the government side, clear requirements, right? Understanding what the mission is, understanding what the goals are, right? So here's what I need, here's how we need to get there, and here's how much money you have to work with, right? Because traditionally that's been a shifting minefield, right? Or shifting sand, I should say. When you have clear requirements, then industry can build to those requirements. And then helping knock down the blockers for innovation. Industry wants to give the government and the DoD all of the great tools. We want you to have all the toys. Right, we want to empower you to go into harm's way or to do your daily tasks in the most meaningful, rapid way possible and to claim some efficiencies. I think it's industry's responsibility to lean in, embrace that. A good example is FedRAMP 20X, right? That change, I think, is a huge milestone for industry. It brings small market businesses to the forefront. It allows small CSPs to provide critical services easier, right? So, and we're seeing in a lot of the test cases a lot of success. Knox AI briefed yesterday. I was attending one of those meetings, and they talked about how you can literally do an audit with nothing but AI and then have a 3PAO validated. And the speed that the government gets from innovators like Knox AI leaning in is huge, right? So I think it's incumbent upon industry to make it easy for the government to bring it in. Give a secure product, be open, make sure your SBOMs are published, make sure that the things that you're doing are correct, are right. Stop trying to cut corners, right? Be compliant where you need to, and make it easy for government to say yes, because I think we're in a time where they want to say yes. We just got to make it easy for them to do that.
Are they getting better at making the requirements clear? Because it seems to me in the cyber realm, part of that is incumbent on understanding what the threat landscape looks like.
Correct. And I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a time where the threat landscape was as modified by the geopolitical landscapes as it is right now. But I really believe that they are, or they're making an effort. Again, FedRAMP 20X. Zero trust, right? Zero trust is really clear. If you are a zero trust player, here are your principles, you have to abide by them, and then the government can report on them. FedRAMP 20X, coming from controls, right, and going into KSIs, making it very simple simple is a relative term, but making it simple for people to understand what the requirements are and then build to them. So I see an effort there. I see it is getting better. There is obviously room to improve. I think efforts in both the DoD and the federal government really are making very clear we need to make things faster, we need to make things better, we need to do it, and we need to get it out in front of people rapidly. I mean, the executive order yesterday signed by the president for AI, I think, kind of sums up the need for moving.
What would you like to see the agencies and the government as an enterprise do to make sure that they stay out of the compliance business and stay in the cyber defense business?
Well, I think having a better understanding of exactly what the goal is, right? So compliance was never intended to be a whipping stick to keep people in line. It was intended to be a roadmap for security, right? But they lost that vision because vendors stopped using it because they weren't forced to, and then it became regulatory, right? And that's when it got nasty. So let's keep it simple, right? Move from point-in-time reviews into real time and understand that cyber resiliency is the goal. Good security in the front end should bring compliance on the back end. So by moving to things like KSIs or principles that don't move and are not subjective, make it easier for us to hit the goalpost.
Dale, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today. Dale Hoke of RegScale on innovation in government. Thanks for joining me for this Innovation in Government program presented by Carahsoft. If you missed any part of this program, you can watch the show in its entirety on our website at fedgovtoday.com or the FedGov Today YouTube channel. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks for watching. Good night.